for you now. You got 2 minutes of my time, and I don't really break the week.
Welcome to a brand new month. We are kicking off December, and I'm really excited to share this video with you because we're going to be diving into how to use your cycle to identify what you want and be able to know how to get it. If you're really into your spirituality, if you're really into your intuition and manifestation, this video is going to get you super excited. I've used my cycle in so many ways to understand like that stagnant energy and that resistance we may feel in our life, especially when you're trying to make like a big life event happen, whether it's a new job, whether it's getting married or finding a partner or having a baby or doing a big move. Like we have these big milestones that we're always looking to achieve, but we can kind of feel stuck and we're just like, I don't know what direction to go into. And using your cycle, and if you've been cycle syncing with me, then this is going to be the video for you because it is just so exciting to be able to use the changes of our brain chemistry that happens with our cycle and partner it with your intuition, your feminine energy, and manifesting your dreams. So when I first got started with cycle syncing, I was learning all of our cycle phases, and I'll drop my cycle phase cheat sheets for you below if you ever want to tap into that and be able to understand more about how your brain chemistry changes with your cycle, because you actually will think, feel, and act differently during each of your cycle phases, and you can totally use it as you're navigating your life. So as I was learning this, I was understanding more of how our brain chemistry would change, which would influence our mood, our thoughts, how we might process something, how we might interpret different energy or roadblocks in our life. And it was this beautiful way of using our spirituality that is truly built into how our monthly cycle works. So we don't have these conversations enough, so I've been really excited to dive into this with you and share some examples from my own life of how that even comes together, because you might be like, okay, I'm a bit confused. Like, how can you use your cycle to manifest your dreams? So what you might start noticing when you start cycle syncing too is that your life starts lining up with your cycle phases. So if you're going to try and do something, it's going to then partner with the cycle phase in which you're in. So that is you already being in this free-flowing energy. That's you already paying attention to your emotions and your feminine energy and using that more to your advantage, because I know how stressful it can be to try and figure out these big life moments and how to make them happen. So one example to start with is when I started cycle syncing, I was looking to start a business in health coaching, but I just didn't know what would make me different. What kind of topic could I be talking about more that I really like, that would connect me deeper with other women who are more like me? And that's where women's health and cycle syncing came into play. And I started noticing, and this is where you can grab your pen and paper, is during your luteal phase, this is when you want to notice the energy in your life that feels stagnant and like something isn't working. So basically what's happening is your right and left brain hemispheres are becoming more aligned to have your period. So when you're having your period, those brain hemispheres are the most aligned. So think of your analytical and creative sides, and they basically collide and combust when you're having your period. So the week before your period, as your body is shifting and transitioning to be able to prepare for the following week, you start noticing things in your life that aren't working for you, and you become hyper focused on it. So you might be like, oh, I just hate my job, or I really don't like my partner when he does this, or like I am really irritated by whatever person's situation. It happens to all of us. And you might be like, oh, well, that's just like my PMS. Well, certainly, but it's also your brain and your body changing as your hormone levels are starting to fluctuate. Your body is shifting. And so with that, you can then recognize where you feel stuck, what is making you feel irritable and off kilter, and really pay attention to that, because that's your body's way of saying, hey, there's something to pay attention to here, and we need to dive deeper in what's not making you feel good so that we can figure out what will. And then during your period, you then have that space built in to reflect on it. So I always tell my clients to journal. I always carry a journal with me during these 2 weeks of every single month, because you want to get your thoughts out of your head and onto paper, whether you're doing a brain dump or whether you're getting more strategic of like, okay, I want these thoughts and I want to kind of dive into what might be bothering me. So it could be something where every single month you're noticing the same problem in your life is coming forward. And when that happens, that is like gold. I'm trying to figure out essentially what is stuck in your life, and we want to unstick that. So the week before your period, all you have to do is set the intention to sit with what bothers you and just write it down and just ask yourself the deeper question of like, why does this bother me? Why is this not sitting right with me? And then when your period starts the following week, that's when you want to reflect on it and ask yourself, what could make it better? What could make me happy? And I think where a lot of women get tripped up in this is that we don't always want to honor what our intuition says, because it might be against what our mental thoughts are thinking. So you might be thinking like, I know I want to make a change in my career, but I'm scared essentially of how much time, energy, effort, and change and transition that change is going to then make. So we then mentally get stuck in all the obstacles that our brain perceives, and it basically wants to protect us from being uncomfortable or, making too many changes or making the wrong choice, or we kind of get stuck in our heads, versus your heart is basically telling you, this isn't feeling right. I know that it sounds scary. I know that there could be a lot of change, but this is going to be good for you. You're coming up to a lot of resistance anyway. So I'm trying to encourage you and push you to then pivot and shift and go down a path that's actually going to make you happier. You just can't see it right now because our mental thoughts, of course, and like self-judgment and criticism and what we think others might think, or all the laundry list of things of why you shouldn't do something, get in the way. So when I was first starting Balanced Bombshells, I actually used my cycle as a way to push myself and understand what I was feeling. So I used to work in fundraising, and I would plan a lot of events. I loved my career. I loved the people that I worked with. I loved being able to raise money for communities that needed extra help. I just loved the community aspect. But as I was going down deeper in that path, I noticed that I was starting to feel more unhappy. I just felt like there was another part of me that I wasn't sharing with the world that I needed to. And that was the birth of Balanced Bombshells. And it was actually through meditation before and during my period that this finally came forward. And I would see myself leading workshops with women. I would see myself talking with women about their health. I would see myself having them journal or write something down or dive deeper into what was in their heart. And that's exactly what I now do today. So it was just fascinating of how I had to let go of what my brain was scared of, and the change and transition that I didn't know if I could do or not. And like, because it's scary to make big moves and changes in your life. And so I really had to get to a point of trust and honoring my intuition and recognizing that we come into these scenarios where we feel resistance, we feel unhappy, and we're feeling just blah and stuck. That is your body basically telling you that something needs to change and you need to take action in another way that you might not have thought yet. So my most recent one is when my husband and I were deciding to buy a house and figure out where we wanted to settle. Because I am originally from Massachusetts. I went to college in Rhode Island. I moved to New York City afterwards. And I was there for about 3 years when I finally was like, oh, I just keep dreaming of California. So that was another manifestation that I've had in my life where I just kept thinking about California. I couldn't let go of the thought. And that's another tidbit for you too, is focus on what is that thing that you keep thinking about and you can't stop the thought from coming forward. And it's like, oh, I just don't know what this is. Or you're like, yeah, that might be nice one day, and you put it off. Those are like little nuggets of the path that you're supposed to be taking. So I used to just dream of California. And finally, after I was in New York for 3 years, I was like, I just feel like something isn't clicking right here. Like I'm not meant to be here anymore. And I decided to look into moving to California, and I moved sight unseen to the Bay Area. And I didn't have a job yet. I didn't have a home. I only knew 2 people. So all of the conflicts that were coming forward that my mind could be like, well, this is too hard, you shouldn't do it. My heart was telling me to do it anyway. And I made that leap, and thankfully I did, because I have had such a beautiful time. Okay, that's much better. The lighting was just getting a little too dark in here because it's the afternoon that I'm filming this. So we finally fixed the window. But I had such a beautiful time in Northern California. And after 2 years of being there, I was really thriving in my career. I met fantastic friends. I loved the area that I lived in. And that's also when I met Tyler. So when Tyler and I met, I just felt like it was like the manifestation of everything that I could hope and dream for. And even when I met him, I had, in terms of like talking about manifestation, I had written out a man wish list of everything that I wanted in a partner. And I actually wrote it out 2 years before we met. So when we were dating for about 6 months, I brought the list back out and I was like, oh my gosh, he hits everything that I was looking for, which is part of how I knew that he was the one for me. And we were in the Bay Area dating for about 3 years before we moved to San Diego. So kind of the same thing was happening where I was recognizing just the resistance in our life and just, you know, we were talking about where we wanted to move if we didn't feel like the Bay Area was for us. And that's when we landed on San Diego. And in San Diego, everything just kind of, you know, when you're going to make changes in your life and you just come up against like roadblock after roadblock, and then when you find the right path, you just get green light after green light after green light. That's what happened when we first moved to San Diego. And so we got engaged, we got married, and then, you know, we got pregnant, and then we had Dylan. So we've been here for 4 years. And so we had all of these green lights. And this past year with Dylan and going through, you know, the past year, we just kept thinking like we want to settle. And we started then noticing 2021 was giving us a lot of roadblocks. Everything we went to go and do here, it was just like red light, red light, red light. So I was just like, you know what? This has come up numerous times in my life at this point. Why don't we look at this resistance? Why don't I come back to my cycle work and reflect on this and just tune into what isn't working? And we both were feeling the need to settle and to buy a home. You know, we've had the pleasure of being able to live in so many wonderful places. We didn't have home ownership essentially like weighing us down at that time of our life because we were wanting to, you know, make changes or move in different places. And that really worked for us for a long time. So then this past year, we're like, well, we really want to settle. And every month before my period, I started tuning into, okay, I want to settle. We're ready to buy a home. We're ready to kind of stay in one place. But it was just feeling that California was no longer right for us. And so during my menstrual week, I would reflect on that. And I would ask myself like, okay, what could you be looking at that you can't see right now? And I would essentially just ask myself these questions. I would go on walks and just think about it because you really want to give your mind and body space to think and reflect. And without that, you can't force the thought to come forward. You can't force a solution to basically happen in your life. So it can be overwhelming because on one side, you just want the clarity and you want the answer and you just don't know what it is yet. And that's okay. So that's where you have to have a bit of faith and just know that with time, it's going to come. Because sometimes, especially with our spirituality, maybe it's not the right time. And maybe you're just meant to observe and recognize that something's not working. And then the other step of the process is trying to figure out what is the right path that's going to make you feel good. And sometimes when it's such a big life change, you need to sit with that energy of, okay, am I prepared to take that on? And not judge yes or no. It's just, okay, I need a little bit more preparation in order to fully show up and be excited to go down what that next path is. And for us, I definitely had to take in like my thoughts and desires, bring in Tyler's thoughts and desires, and then also energetically try to make everything feel more effortless, because that's what cycle syncing is going to bring for you, is to make your life feel more effortless, even in these big life moments and in these periods of change and transition, because we're always going to have them. Whether you're living one place forever, you're always going to have change and transition, even if you're not like physically moving and doing something different like that. It might come in with new relationships. It might come with falling out of relationships. It might come with a new job. It might come with a baby and another baby and family coming and going and just all the change that happens in our life. So when Tyler and I first started dating, I actually almost moved to Denver, Colorado. I was actually looking at jobs to transition out of the Bay Area and live there. And I had never visited before. And I was just like, I just can't shake this thought of Denver. I just don't know why, but I just feel called to it. And it was the same feeling I had when I was living in New York. And I just felt so called to the Bay Area. And I had never visited that either. So really just even trusting these voices that are coming forward and these thoughts that you just can't shake, because there's something there there. And I remember saying to Tyler, I was like, maybe we should just be open to explore it. And so we didn't make a decision of like, this is what we're doing, this is not what we're doing. It was just like, let's explore it and see what could happen. And we started just kind of crunching the numbers on home ownership, what was available for us in San Diego or other parts of California, what kind of lifestyle did we want for ourselves and for Dylan, what do we want in a home? Like, we really were also bringing forward a lot of the questions of the logistics of what we wanted, or, how to kind of make that happen. And then we kind of just let go of even thinking of the stress of it, because that could definitely make you more fearful and just kind of shut down and not necessarily pay attention to it. And every luteal phase, every menstrual phase, I would just set the intention to sit with it and just even ask myself, like, how does this thought feel? Does it feel good to move forward in? Does it, does it feel like I'm missing something or I'm not being as open? So really challenging myself to not mentally dictate and really, in my heart, in my intuition, my feminine energy, sit with what feels good. Because if you constantly move forward to what feels good, that's going to lead you down the right path to being so happy. And the one roadblock that I think a lot of people can kind of come up against, especially us women, where if you might be a people pleaser, you kind of take in other people's thoughts and opinions, and they become your own, and they become your own fears. And we have to be able to separate, because your peers or your family or your friends are not living your life, you are. And you have to be the one who's living with the consequences of your decision, whether you're going to choose to move forward in a path that makes you happy, or listen to them where they're essentially just projecting their fears of what they want for you or what they wouldn't do for themselves onto you, which also doesn't feel good. So my family was more open to us moving to Colorado. They're from Massachusetts, and they were just like, oh, this is so exciting. This could be just another place that we get to go visit. They were really excited. Tyler's family was a little bit more like, maybe you should move towards us, because they live in Northern California. And we really had to make the decision of what we wanted together. So it started to feel really good about making a decision of moving to Denver. And we went to visit at the end of October, and I had never even been to Colorado. So my poor husband is like, why are you even bringing this up if you haven't even been there? And I was just going through like weather, job, economy, house, school system, like literally going through all of the things that I had researched. And I was like, I just have this very strong feeling, and I don't want to say like intuitive nudge, that it could be a really good fit. So even just crunching the numbers, it was very clear to us that San Diego was no longer working for us, and Denver was a better choice for our future. So we started looking for homes. We put an offer on a few homes, and it didn't work out. And I just remember thinking, we're being guided to wherever we need to go. And you constantly have to have that faith, because we don't get to necessarily know how things are going to work out. So definitely like being grounded within yourself, grounded in your emotions and what you believe is, could happen, and just being really excited about the possibilities. So it was just 2 weeks ago. So I'm filming this in the beginning of December 2021. It was just 2 weeks ago, before Thanksgiving, that we had an offer accepted on a house, and we will be moving in 2 weeks. So the middle of December. And it is so much of what we were looking for in a home. There's an elementary school just down the street, so Dylan can walk to school. There is so much more of the lifestyle that we were looking for, and the type of community that we're excited to raise a family in. And I owe so much to cycle syncing and using our cycle as a way of guiding the thought process and how that even works. So if you've been taking notes, definitely think of what change you want to make in your life. Sit with the intention of what makes you feel irritable or moody, or just not 100% excited about your life in your luteal phase. Really sit with that energy. And then in your menstrual phase, really reflect on it and ask yourself what could make you happy, what would make things feel more positive or free flowing in your life. Because when you can tap into that energy, you're constantly going to be able to shift and pivot more into the direction that you want. So today we've talked more about big life decisions and how to make that happen. But as you become even more comfortable with it, you can use it as little decisions that you make in your life. So even from like what you want to eat to, maybe a change that you want to make in your schedule. Maybe you're like, man, I've just been feeling like the daily grind and I just really need to switch things up. But that's okay to do. And you can totally use your cycle in that way as well. And it just makes life a little bit more free flowing, and you can tap more into what feels good, because your energy needs to be lifted and you're meant to feel good and excited about the things that you're doing in your life. So I'm really glad you were able to join me on this video and, at least have me share some life experiences of how using our cycle to even honor our intuition and just recognize the resistance in our life and be open to something, even though it seems scary. Like mentally, there's just so much to a life change. And when you're grounded and that the choice is right for you and you feel so solid in the decision you're making, it takes the fear out of it, and then you get more excited versus feeling weighed down or stressed about it. So I hope you have a wonderful holiday season.